Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and what you see before you is another GTX 580, a GTX 580 that I never really planned on even having, but yet I ended up with another GTX 580. So what's the story behind this? So I was talking about trying to e-power my GTX 460 with what's left of my GTX 470 PC, and not actually I think I'm gonna show it to you what I did. So here's my drawer. Here's the 460 with the custom heatsink, and here's what's left of the 470 VRM. And currently, let's get the 580 out of the way for a short amount of time. So this is the 470 e-power board, and so right now it doesn't work. So once cutting the PCB, I noticed that this 5-volt LDO over here is no longer getting 12 volts. So I jumped this red wire here to give it 12 volts again. So now the LDO is working again and we get 5 volts. And I will replace it with a more substantial wire once the e-power works, because I do not trust this to handle all the current that the 5-volt LDO is going to pull. But for the time being, I just want the power module to fire up, and right now it doesn't. I disconnected the volt mod because there was like a blob of solder right here that I wanted to get rid of, and this was connected through the blob of solder to like ground. The important side is still attached, so I can reconnect the volt mod once I want it. And then here's the wire that is connected from to the 3.3 volt power plane on the PCI Express slot of the 460, and it's connected to the enable transistor of the VCore PWM controller. Because when you cut the VRM off the card, well, there's no power good signal coming from the GPU anymore, because the GPU it's not there. So I had to manually override the enable pin, and that's what the transistor is for. So normally there would be a signal from the GPU that enables this transistor and sends a voltage to the enable pin. Hence, the GPU is no longer there. I used this wire to give it 3.3 volts to try and fire up the PWM controller again. Now, as of now, it sadly doesn't work. I think I know why it doesn't work, and I've kind of already fixed it. I just need to wait. So I suspect that the enable pin is not the only thing that wants to see a voltage at 3.3 volts right here, because there are drivers, these little drivers right here. I don't know what they are. Like they only say AAK, and like that turns up nothing. And I suspect these need 3.3 volts, and they're not getting it. And if I connect 3.3 volts only to the enable pin, it's not gonna go to those drivers. So I have to identify the 3.3 volt power plane on this card somehow. And what I did is I ordered actually a couple of here, what are they called? Little buck controllers, like little one-phase VRMs on a little PCB that have like adjustable voltage. And I'm going to take one of these, hook it up to 12 volts from the power connectors right here, set it to 3.3 volts and use that to feed 3.3 volts to the card. And that should hopefully make the e-power module work. For now, it doesn't work. So go back into the drawer. Yeah. And now back to the GTX 580 here. So I'm still trying to get the 470 e-power to work, but it's just like there is no documentation for it. But there is documentation for making e-power modules out of GTX 480 reference PCBs, which this one is very, very similar to, and like other cards like the GTX 580 DirectCU2 and the Lightning, which I do have, but I'm not turning these into e-power modules because these two 580s, I really like them. They do really, like, these 580s, the two ones that I have pretty good cores and pretty good memory. They clock really, really fast. Not like this piece of garbage. This is garbage. And So what happened is I got onto eBay and I just looked for a dead 480 or dead 580, and I found this. It's a reference 580 just from Zotac, so they have slightly upgraded the capacitors right here, and it's a matte black PCB like Zotac used on all the other cards that I have from them, but apart from that it's a reference PCB. Well, actually they might have changed the MOSFETs, because the 480 reference is running different ones than this one is. And I was expecting to see the same MOSFETs, but these are actually the same MDU2654 and MDU2656 MOSFETs that we saw on the 460. And these MOSFETs are pretty trash. But we do have literally twice as many of them here as on the 460, which is still inadequate for a core like this, but it is pretty adequate for, say, a non-flagship tier core, which I wanted to actually use this VRM of this dead card to make, because I have documentation on how to turn a 480 reference PCB, and by extension this PCB, which is pretty much identical, like the PWM controller. Yes, it's slightly shifted to the end of the card, but like I know what an enable pin is and why use like solder a 3.3 signal to it, and yeah. And I just wanted to get, like, I literally paid $10 for this card plus $5 shipping, which apparently I was told is still a little bit too much for a dead card. But like I was okay with it. I'm just like, okay, I get a dead card. I have documentation how to turn this into an e-power, and I'm gonna have fun while I do it. So today the card turns up. I knew beforehand that it had silicon damage, so it shows artifacts. And I put the card into my system, and yes, it was indeed showing artifacts and like not working at all. And I was just like, okay, I could start to work on the e-power, or just for the hell of it, just get the heat gun out, point it at the core, and look if it fixes the card. Well, the card is still in one piece, and guess why? It works. The card is back. I have, well, it's kind of a repair, not like the fix that we did on the Palette 970, which I actually encountered a roadblock with that one. That might not get ever fixed actually, but I'm still gonna try, but the card might be in a no-fix scenario because I screwed something up that might be fixable but might not. And yeah, this card, yeah, I reflowed the core with the heat gun. So like I took the heat gun like 5 to 10 centimeters away from the core for like maximum 1 minute, pointed at the core. And this makes the BGA, so like those little metal boards that you can't see because the camera won't focus, under the GPU. So like the GPU is attached to the board with a grid array of little solder balls. And what usually happens with big cores like these is they thermocycle themselves to death, and those little boards break down. And when you reflow the core by heating them back up, they get soft again, and possibly like inconsistent or still broken connections can become like whole again, and they can get repaired by heating the solder. And that's what happened. So the card is back. Reflow worked. I've run plenty of benchmarks on it since, tried to overclock it, even tried to overvolt it, which for some weird reason Fermi BIOS editor can't open the BIOS from this card, which is just like, why? It's a 580. It could open the BIOS of my other 580s. Why not this one? I don't know. But the good news is the PWM controller on this is the same one we have on the 480. This is an CHL8266. And this does work with the Galax Hall of Fame NVVDD utility, which is a tool that you can find on overclock.net, I think, that just straight up talks to the PWM controller and tells it to put out a higher voltage, and it does work. It's like you need a controller that is capable of understanding the software signals being sent to it. and this one does. So you can overvolt the card to oblivion with that voltage tool, though I would never go over 1.25 volts. Even 1.2 volts is kind of pushing this VRM already. So like on this card, like this VRM powering this core, don't go over 1.25 volts. And also at 1.25 volts, the like reference card comes with a reference heatsink. The heatsink is kinda, yeah, I mean it's a blower. I tried to scrape off the sticker on it. I failed quite badly. And like, yeah, at 1.25 volts, even at 1.2, the reference cooler is really struggling hard. Which is why I wanted to write a custom BIOS, because the BIOS on this card only goes to 85% on the fan, and I don't mind noise. I would just like to go to 100% and just like get the card cooled better, but can't do, BIOS not readable. Which, yeah. And now as it is, the card is completely working. Like, the thing with reflowing cores is like, the card might work for years, for months, for days, or it might die after 10 seconds when I power it up again. You never know with reflows. And now I kind of have a 580 that I can't turn into an ePower module because it works. And like, I have like a commitment to not destroy good hardware, or like at least not intentionally destroy good hardware. So until I turn this into an ePower module, the card has to die again and not come back from another reflow. And I think that's gonna be a long time because the card, like, I ran plenty of benchmarks on this. I ran it at high voltages. I pushed it. The core's garbage, to be honest. Like at the voltages that I'm comfortable with, this does like 900 megahertz, which compared to the other cards, like even when overvolting it, it did like 950, which is on par with the DirectCO2 on air, which has an absolutely atrocious cooler. It's actually performing worse than this one. Literally performing worse than this cooler. And then the Lightning did 970 on air. And yeah. So this core is like... and 950 at like extremely hot temperatures, and the VRM is like almost dying, and at reasonable voltages this is like a 900 megahertz core. 900, maybe 920 megahertz, but that's like pushing it. So the core is not great. The memory is really interesting though on this. So every single Fermi card I had to this day came with Samsung video memory. This has Hynix, and yeah, for a while I actually doubted that Hynix cards even exist, because like every single one I got had Samsung, and I had quite a few Fermi cards. This one finally came with Hynix, and it sucks. Yeah, like Samsung always has the reputation of making better VRAM, and like, yep, that's true. It's true for GDDR6, and it was true for pretty much every iteration of GDDR5. And I can tell you, it's true for the GDDR5 you find on Fermi as well. This memory is not great. So this cooler does have memory cooling integrated, as you can see. And this is, yeah, like the metal base plate that cools the VRAM. It also cools the VRM, but that's quite a distance away, and it's not really connected because it's just a thin connection. The core cooler is not part of this. It's not part of this, so that's a separate thing. So having a metal plate to cool the video VRAM is like pretty much like the GTX 580 Lightning, which also has like a metal base plate to cool VRAM and VRM. The Lightning does 2550 plus on memory. This does 2300 with the same amount of cooling. And I mentioned the cooling because the DirectCO2 580 I have does also Yeah, 2325 stable. 2325 was not stable on this, but 2300 has been stable so far. So direct CO2, also Samsung, is just a tiny little bit faster, but the thing is, the direct CO2 has literally zero cooling on the memory. When I cool it down with like a really powerful, like I used chilled water on it, and like the cold obviously not only went to the GPU, but traveled through the PCB to the memory. The memory got really cold. And the direct CO2 started running the memory at 2600 megahertz plus. I think at some point we had it running 2675 megahertz. So yes, with cooling, the direct CO2 would beat this card, no problem. And yeah, memory not great. Like, this is a reference PCB. You still have a two-phase for your memory, which is on par with the direct CO2, though the direct CO2 has a much more powerful two-phase and also a lot more filtering. Like, it's my first Hynix Fermi card, so this might actually scale a lot with cap mods. Having pulled off all the cap mods, like the older cap mods that I made from other cards, because I like to redo them, I do have a lot of capacitors. I might test this. Yeah, like, that's... I pretty much have nothing to do with the card. I also don't want to delete it, because, like, I reflowed the core. Because it works now, doesn't, like... The card works now. If I hammer on it to remove the IHS, like, I might break what I just fixed. And then deleting it is pointless. So I'm not deleting it, because honestly the temperatures are okay. I don't mind the noise. Temperatures are okay. I can mount a water block on it if I have to. Like, yeah, that's not really that big of an issue. And yeah. So I think it's closing thoughts time. So this 580 came to me as dead. I tried to save it just for the hell of it, and it worked. And now I have a 580 that I wanted to turn into an e-power, but now can't, because I have a personal code not to ruin good hardware. And yeah, now I gotta figure out what I do with it until it dies and I steal the VRM. But again, I don't know when or if it will even die in the time that I like. This fix can last for potentially years. And by years, I mean years of it being used in a daily system. I'm not using this in a daily system. I have my 2080 Ti and my test bench is running a 780 Ti for the daily card. This is much slower than both of those. So I'm not going to daily it. So yeah, I guess this card, I mean, if I paid $15 for it. Yeah, I think this is, because the 460 is now going to be an e-power. And the 460 was kind of like, if I want to try something but don't want to risk a good card, I use that card. But since that's now an e-power, and once the e-power actually works on that card, it's not going to be a worthless card, it's going to be a pretty important and precious card to me, because it e-powered, I like it a lot. I guess this is going to be my new, I don't know what card to test this on card. So if I ever have a random idea and don't want to ruin a good card, well, guess who's getting punished? But yeah, that's pretty much it for this GTX 580. Sadly, like the MOSFETs, I can't really review the VRM. Like, it's a stock reference PCB. It's a 6-phase with these MDU MOSFETs that I talked about. They're pretty trash. Like, yeah. But yeah, I guess I don't really have anything more to say about this card. Or like, for now. But this was like just the introduction. I might actually do a proper PCB breakdown. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and to see each other next time. Goodbye.